All right, now we're going to do weld number 4. Weld number 4 is called the multi-T joint. And what that is, it's a regular T joint set up just like this. But instead of one weld down the center, we are going to put 3 welds down the center. So after we do our first weld, we're going to stick our second weld slightly down on the bottom edge of the first bead, and then we're going to put our third weld up on top of that, covering the first weld completely, but tying in, or almost like a mini surface weld, over the second bead. So I kind of place these electrodes here just like that. That's kind of how they'll go. And just like on the surface weld, the first bead will take a full electrode, but the second and third beads, you may end up with a little bit more than the numbers left behind after you do them, because we're not filling in as much. We're just making sure we cover them. You'll notice on the lap joint it said 2F lap joint. And that's because this is the 2F position. It's called horizontal because gravity is pulling straight down through the side of the weld. This is also a 2F T joint. Gravity is pulling down against the side. Now in a 1F, gravity will pull down straight through the weld, and that means it goes through the center of the joint. So it kind of looks like a Y or an X. I recommend cutting a 3-inch piece and 2 2-inch pieces. This will allow you to tack this together and kind of leave it like an X on your plate. It allows the weld to kind of just fall into place. It's a little bit easier to weld than the 2F multi-T joint. We're going to weld it in this propped up 1F position. All right, let me get another piece of metal and get geared up. So we're going to tack this together just like we do every other weld. If you don't tack things together and secure them in place as you weld them, the heat can cause this metal to move and distort. So we want to make sure that this metal stays put. I want to put a little tack on the edge of the vertical member and the horizontal member. I want to try and make sure that this plate is in the center so that it makes a good X. So I just move it around a little bit and I place my second tack. Okay, now I have an X set up, and approximately, again, 3 inches, and these pieces could be about 1 3/4 inches, and that would give you a fairly balanced X. You don't want to cut just 3 3-inch pieces because then you'll end up with something that's kind of lopsided. The 2 inches and 3 or 4 inches kind of work. Now that this is my 90-degree area, I want to maintain straight in and then slightly kick back. And again, if I just hold it at the very end and push straight down, I will move all the way across and put in my first weld. This weld will be slightly harder to chip depending on the temperature of your metal. The slag, as it pops off and as you scrape it off, you need to protect your face. I'd put your helmet on grind mode and keep it down while you chip it so you don't get a hot piece of slag stuck in your face, between your face and your face mask, or down your shirt. Okay, we're going to go ahead and weld our first bead. Again, we're about 115 amps, 30% on our dig. Okay, now that it's done, we're going to chip it. And again, you'll see as it starts to get hot, some of the slag will even peel up a little bit, and that's all right. A lot of people like the idea that their slag will peel off for them. If your bead is smooth enough and straight enough, the slag doesn't have much to hold on to, and so it will start to release. As the metal cools down, it shrinks a little bit, causing the slag to peel off. It's not bound up by your weld being a little bumpy. We are going to put our second weld in, and we are going to, just like we did on the surface weld, we're going to trace the very edge of that first weld. And we're going to watch exactly where that electrode is placed. We don't want to walk up the edge of the wall or across the face to the other side. We want to try and maintain the puddle. And we're going to cover up most of that first weld. We'll see a little edge of it poking out on this side, and that's exactly what we want. So again, my angle is going to be right about 45 with slight kickback, and I'm going to try and trace this slight edge of this puddle over here. Okie dokie. Let's go ahead and give it a weld. All right, you'll notice again we have more electrode left over, and that's all right. We're not filling in as much as we did on that first pass. You can notice the beads over here, and then you can see the first pass is slightly poking through down this edge. That's great. Nice and consistent, nice and steady. Now we're going to take this last electrode and we're going to run that bead down that side. And there you have it. Looks an awful lot like a surface weld, doesn't it? Overlapping each other. Watching that hand-eye coordination is really important, and that's why we do the surface weld, to help train the eye. But now you got those 3 welds in there to build up this material. Now, if I needed to, I could put another 3 passes, or 4 passes, 5 passes. Essentially, we want the weld size to equal close to the material thickness. So this really is for when we're welding really thick material and we need to put in a giant weld. We look down the side of that as well. We also want to make sure that the bead is balanced. We don't want it to favor or lean more towards one side or the other. So I often look straight down your weld to see how well you've got the welds balanced in there. We shouldn't be favoring one side over the other. It's really important that you chip and brush all of your slag off between each pass. We can't have chunks of slag stuck between those passes because that would be a discontinuity or an inclusion, and it could cause that weld to become weaker. And if we're trying to hold something up nice and strong, it's going to break. All right, so there's your multi-pass T-joint. We're just going to go until we hit 3 welds in the joint. Sometimes I may ask you to throw another 3, so there's 6 total in a joint. But typically, we're going to try and get you to get the idea of this down so that you can get the weld size to where it needs to be. If you can get 3 good solid beads in a joint, you can easily start adding up 3 more passes or 4 more passes, and those layers will start to stack up. All right, good luck.